The night is not meant to be a place of fear, loneliness, or uncertainty. It is a sacred pause given to us by God, a gentle invitation to step away from the demands of the day and rest in His presence. When the world grows quiet and distractions fade, our hearts become more aware of what truly matters. In this stillness, God draws near, not with noise or pressure, but with peace that settles the soul and calms the mind. Throughout the day, we carry so much within us: responsibilities, conversations, disappointments, and expectations. By the time night arrives, these burdens often weigh heavily on our spirits. Yet the presence of God at night reminds us that we were never meant to carry these loads alone. As we turn toward Him, we are invited to lay everything down: the worries that keep us awake, the fears we cannot explain, and the thoughts that replay in our minds. All find rest when placed in His care. Nighttime teaches us trust. Sleep itself is an act of faith. When we close our eyes, we acknowledge that we are not in control of everything, and that is not a weakness. It is freedom. God watches over us when we cannot watch over ourselves. While we rest, He remains alert, guarding our hearts, our homes, and our futures. This assurance allows peace to replace anxiety and confidence to rise where fear once lived. In God's presence, the night becomes a place of restoration. What was drained during the day is gently refilled. The strength that seemed to fade returns quietly. The emotional weight we carried begins to lift, not because every problem has been solved, but because we remember who holds the solution. His presence reassures us that nothing we face is beyond His reach. The calm of the night also allows us to listen. When distractions are removed, God's voice becomes clearer. He speaks through stillness, reminding us of His promises and reaffirming our value. In His presence, we are not defined by our mistakes, our struggles, or our fears. We are defined by His love, His grace, and His faithfulness. As peace settles in, the heart learns to slow down. Breathing becomes easier. Tension releases its grip. The mind that once raced now finds rhythm in trust. God's presence at night becomes a safe place, a refuge where the soul can exhale without explanation or effort. In this quiet moment, we are reminded that peace is not the absence of trouble, but the presence of God. And when He is near, the night is no longer something to endure. It becomes a blessing, a time of renewal, and a reminder that we are never alone, even in the darkest hours. Gratitude has a way of opening our eyes to the faithfulness of God, especially when we pause at the end of the day to reflect. As night falls, we are given a moment to look back and recognize that we did not arrive here by accident. Every hour, every step, and every breath was sustained by grace. Even in moments we did not understand, God was present, guiding us through circumstances seen and unseen. When we choose gratitude, we begin to notice how God's hand was at work throughout the day. Some blessings arrived wrapped in joy. Others came disguised as challenges. Not every moment was easy, but every moment served a purpose. Gratitude allows us to see beyond outcomes and appreciate the process, trusting that God was shaping us even when the path felt unclear. There were times today when strength showed up unexpectedly, when patience lasted longer than expected, or when help arrived right on time. These moments are not coincidences, They are reminders of God's careful attention to our lives. Gratitude helps us acknowledge that we were protected from dangers we never saw and comforted in ways we may not have recognized at the time. Even the closed doors deserve thanksgiving. What felt like rejection may have been redirection. What seemed like delay may have been preparation. Gratitude reframes disappointment and helps us trust that God's wisdom is greater than our understanding. Instead of focusing on what did not happen, gratitude teaches us to appreciate what was spared, what was learned, and what was gained through patience. As we reflect, gratitude softens the heart. It shifts our focus from lack to abundance, from fear to faith. We begin to realize that God's goodness was present not only in the highlights of the day, but also in its quiet moments, the simple things, safety, provision, companionship, and peace become powerful reminders of His care. Gratitude also heals. It releases resentment, calms frustration, and invites contentment. When we thank God for what we have, we loosen the grip of comparison and dissatisfaction. The heart becomes lighter and joy finds room to grow. Gratitude does not deny pain, but it keeps pain from having the final word. At night, gratitude prepares the soul for rest. A thankful heart sleeps better because it is not burdened by regret or consumed by worry. It rests in the assurance that God was faithful today and will be faithful again tomorrow. Gratitude builds confidence in His consistency and reminds us that His mercies are renewed with each new day. As we offer thanks, we acknowledge that our lives are held by a loving and attentive God. We recognize that no effort was wasted, no prayer was ignored, and no moment was without purpose. Gratitude becomes our response to His guidance, our quiet worship at the close of the day, and our peaceful surrender into rest. Throughout the day, we collect more than experiences, we collect emotional weight. Words spoken carelessly, decisions we second guess, moments we wish we could redo, and worries about what lies ahead often settle deep within the heart. By nightfall, these thoughts can become heavy, circling the mind and refusing to let the soul rest. Yet, this is the moment when we are invited to release what we were never meant to carry. God does not ask us to hold on to fear, guilt, or regret as proof of responsibility. He invites us to lay them down as an act of trust. Releasing worries begins with acknowledging them honestly. We do not pretend they do not exist, but we also refuse to let them control us. When we place our concerns into God's hands, we are declaring that His strength is greater than our uncertainty. Fear often grows in silence, but peace grows in surrender. The act of giving our worries to God breaks the cycle of anxious thinking. What once felt overwhelming begins to shrink in the light of faith. We remember that the same God who carried us through the day will also carry us through the night and into tomorrow. Nothing we face surprises Him, and nothing is beyond His care. Mistakes have a way of replaying themselves at night. The mind revisits conversations, choices, and missed opportunities. But God's grace meets us in these moments. He does not define us by our failures, nor does He demand perfection. Releasing past mistakes means accepting forgiveness and choosing not to punish ourselves for what God has already covered with mercy. When we let go, we make space for healing. Worry about the future can be just as heavy as regret about the past. Questions about tomorrow, unanswered prayers, and uncertain outcomes can steal rest. Yet releasing these concerns is a declaration that God already stands in our future. We trust that He is preparing the way, aligning circumstances, and working behind the scenes even when we cannot see it. Letting go is not weakness, it is faith in action. It requires humility to admit we need help and courage to trust God with what matters most to us. As we release control, peace takes its place. The heart begins to slow, the mind finds clarity, and the body responds to the relief of surrender. In God's presence, burdens are exchanged for peace. The weight we carried is lifted, not because life suddenly becomes easy, but because we are no longer carrying it alone. Fear loosens its grip, shame loses its voice, and worry no longer dictates our rest. As the night deepens, releasing these burdens becomes an act of worship. It is a quiet confession that God is enough, that His care is sufficient, and that His love is trustworthy. With every concern released, the soul becomes lighter and rest becomes possible, grounded in faith rather than fear. As the day comes to an end, the mind often refuses to slow down. Thoughts race from one concern to another, replaying moments that have already passed and imagining situations that have not yet arrived. This restlessness can disturb the heart and rob the body of peace. Yet prayer becomes the gentle bridge that leads the mind away from chaos and into calm. In prayer, we are not striving to solve everything. We are allowing God to bring order to what feels scattered within us. When we turn to God in prayer, we invite Him into our inner world. We do not have to speak perfectly or explain everything clearly. God understands the unspoken thoughts and the emotions we struggle to name. As we open our hearts, His presence begins to quiet the noise. What once felt loud and overwhelming starts to soften, replaced by a sense of stillness that cannot be manufactured by effort alone. Prayer has the power to slow our breathing, ease tension, and steady the heart. As we focus on God, our attention shifts away from stress and toward trust. The mind that was consumed by worry begins to rest in reassurance. We are reminded that we are not alone, and that truth alone brings comfort. In God's presence, anxiety loses its intensity and peace begins to take root. Through prayer, God gently replaces fear with faith. Fear asks, "What if?" But faith declares, "God is able." As we pray, we surrender our need to control outcomes and accept God's guidance instead. This surrender allows the heart to relax, knowing that the responsibility does not rest solely on our shoulders. God's wisdom becomes our anchor, and His promises steady our thoughts. Prayer also restores emotional balance. It creates space for healing, forgiveness, and clarity. When emotions feel tangled, prayer helps untangle them. God brings perspective, reminding us that temporary troubles do not define eternal truth. The heart becomes lighter as burdens are lifted and peace flows in. In moments of prayer, reassurance settles deeply within us. God's presence is not distant or conditional. It is close and constant. This awareness calms the soul. We begin to feel safe, supported, and understood. The heart no longer feels the need to guard itself so tightly, and rest becomes possible. As prayer continues, the body responds to the peace of the Spirit. Muscles relax, the mind quiets, and the rhythm of rest takes over. What once felt tense now feels settled. Prayer prepares us for sleep by aligning our hearts with God's peace rather than our own worries. Through prayer, calm is not forced, it is received. It flows naturally from trust, surrender, and connection with God. The mind and heart find harmony grounded in the assurance that God is present, faithful, and at work even while we rest. As night settles in and the world grows quiet, our thoughts often turn to the people and places we care about most. Home becomes more than a physical space. It becomes a place of safety, rest, and connection. In prayer, we lift our families and our homes before God, trusting Him to cover what we cannot control. This act of faith acknowledges that while we may lock doors and turn off lights, true protection comes from God's presence. Asking for God's protection is not rooted in fear, but in trust. We recognize that God sees beyond our walls and understands the dangers we may never notice. We invite Him to stand guard over every room, every heart, and every life connected to us. His peace becomes a shield surrounding our homes with calm and security throughout the night. In prayer, we ask God to watch over our loved ones wherever they may be. Whether they are near or far, awake or asleep, we trust that His care reaches them. We place children, parents, spouses, and friends into His hands, believing that His protection is constant and His love is unwavering. This trust allows our hearts to rest. Knowing they are not alone, we also ask for blessings to fill our homes. Blessings of peace where there has been tension, unity where there has been division, and love where there has been weariness. God's blessings bring harmony to relationships and renewal to hearts. His presence transforms ordinary spaces into places of refuge and hope. Praying over the home invites God's peace to settle into every corner. The atmosphere shifts as fear gives way to faith. Restlessness fades and a sense of calm takes its place. God's presence brings comfort that cannot be explained but can be deeply felt. It reassures us that our homes are not just shelters, but sacred spaces where His Spirit dwells. Asking for protection also means trusting God with the unseen. We ask Him to guard our minds from troubling thoughts, our dreams from fear, and our hearts from heaviness. We trust Him to remove anything that seeks to disturb our rest. His protection extends beyond physical safety to emotional and spiritual well-being. Through this prayer, we release our loved ones from our anxious grip and place them into God's capable hands. This surrender brings freedom to our hearts. We rest knowing that God is watching over those we love with greater care than we ever could. As the night deepens, peace settles in, our prayers become a declaration of faith that God's protection is active, His blessings are abundant, and His presence is near. With hearts reassured and spirits calm, we rest in the confidence that our homes and families are covered, guarded, and surrounded by God's enduring love. Nighttime is more than an ending, it is a preparation. As the body rests, God is at work restoring what has been drained and renewing what has been weakened. Sleep becomes a sacred process where strength is quietly rebuilt and the soul is gently refreshed. When we place our trust in God before resting, we allow Him to renew us in ways that go beyond physical rest. Restoration begins with releasing the day completely. The effort we expended, the emotions we carried, and the challenges we faced are no longer ours to manage through the night. God uses this time to replenish our energy and restore our inner balance. What felt exhausting begins to feel lighter as peace settles in and the mind loosens its grip on responsibility. Renewal also touches the heart. Discouragement, frustration, and emotional fatigue often accumulate unnoticed. As we rest in God's care, hope begins to rise again. The heart is reminded that today's difficulties do not define tomorrow's possibilities. God uses rest to realign our perspective, reminding us that His plans are still unfolding and His promises remain unchanged. As we sleep, God prepares us for what lies ahead. The coming day may bring new challenges, but it also brings new opportunities. Trusting God at night allows us to wake with confidence instead of fear. We rise knowing that we are not facing the future alone. God has already gone before us, making a way and providing what we will need. Renewal through rest strengthens faith. When we wake refreshed, our outlook changes. Gratitude replaces heaviness, clarity replaces confusion, and courage replaces hesitation. God restores not only our physical strength, but also our spiritual resolve. We become more aware of His presence and more receptive to His guidance. Hope is renewed as we recognize that each morning is a gift. No matter how yesterday ended, today offers a fresh start. God's mercy meets us again, inviting us to move forward without the weight of past failures. Rest allows the soul to reset, creating space for joy, purpose, and peace to grow. Trusting God through the night also builds resilience. We learn that rest is not a pause in progress, but part of it. God uses stillness to prepare us for movement. He restores our capacity to love, serve, and endure. The strength gained in rest equips us to face the day with confidence and calm. As morning approaches, renewal is already taking shape. God has been at work in the quiet, renewing our strength, steadying our hearts, and filling us with hope. We awaken ready to walk forward with faith, grounded in the assurance that God's blessings are new, His guidance is sure, and His presence will carry us through whatever the day may bring.